All right, so we are back with a non-traditional episode of collections. I know we're used to seeing a lot of, new clothes, vinyl, shoes, whatever it may be, but today's going to kind of be like a recap of the first 2 seasons and kind of, just a celebration of what we've been able to accomplish with those first 8 episodes. As we're reflecting on the top 10 pieces of the first 8 episodes, the reason that we started collections was really to give a platform to people that collect clothes, records, in future seasons we want to do like furniture, anything that people collect. I mean, it is just called collections. It has started off with a lot of clothes and vintage tees and all of that, but we want to start to expand to different things because I just think it's really interesting to talk to people that are passionate about, whatever it is that they're passionate about. So that's why we started collections, and I think it's really cool to just reflect on that after about a year and a half of product. So getting into it, the top 10. So like I said, this is not necessarily, Bible. This is just my opinion. This is, there might be some that are in here because of the story behind them. But for the most part, they're just, 10 pieces that stuck out the most after reviewing, hours of footage, just taking a look at them. So first off is the Keith Haring photography tee that we saw in Aaron Marshall's episode.
This is my first and only Haring piece so far, aside from the Haring tat. But yeah, Bailey at Vintage Culture hooked me up. That's fam. But yeah, he had this hanging on the wall and he had just gotten it in, and I saw how long it was, which is like music to my ears. And I was like, yo, what is that? And he pulled it down, it fit, and it went home with me. So
I'm a really big fan of Keith Haring and what he did in the 80s and, all of the different things that he stood for. I think that his art is timeless, and I think that, even if you don't necessarily know who Keith Haring is, you definitely recognize his art. And we only saw, I think it was 3 Keith Harings throughout all of the episodes that we shot. So I think it's a testament to how uncommon the tees are. So to see the tees is really cool. That's why that one's there at number 10. And then taking a look at number 9, this one is the Flower Boy yellow vinyl that we saw in Harrison Kern's episode.
I bought it right when it came out and I waited 6 months. But this thing is worth a lot of money. This is Flower Boy by Tyler, the Creator.
I really like this one because of all the vinyl that he had. I think that he showed it was the only colored vinyl that we saw. I also think part of it does, come into play when you talk about like the value that it already has. I think when you compare it next to the black vinyl that he said there's another, variant of that a lot of people have, it's really cool that he has a colored vinyl of that album in his collection. And I just think that the album's great. I also think that the artwork's great, and then the colored vinyl, really sets it off. So that's the one that comes in at number 9 that sticks out to me the most. And then taking a look at number 8, this is one of the Grateful Deads that we'll see in this top 10. So the first one that we see is the Grateful Dead all over print that we saw in Carson Deersing's episode, which is Stay Tuned Vintage.
It's like my all-time favorite t-shirt, probably.
It's got this huge space graphic on it, and we've talked about it in length in all of the episodes that we saw Grateful Dead. Their merchandise was just insane, and I think the craftsmanship that goes into making an all-over print is something that's like super underappreciated. It's an insane graphic, and I love the wear on it, the color on it. I've seen it in other instances, but again, his has got great coloring on it and fade, so that's why that one ranks in the top 10. And then moving on to another Grateful Dead in this top 10 is number 7, the Grateful Dead Compton Terrace. This one is not one that was shown necessarily in hand. It was actually on body on Chili in the last episode of season 1.
This is 92 Grateful Dead. I got this from the homie Nick.
Favorite one, it's this one right here. The front design's awesome. It says, "Sometimes the light keeps shining on me, other times I can barely see."
I remember seeing it at the Vintage Collective, the first one that we shot. It was one that I was eyeballing, and then I didn't end up getting it that day, and then we show up for Chili's interview, and he's got it on body, and I think the colors are great on it. I think the Compton Terrace is awesome. It's in Arizona, I believe. It's just a great graphic. And it wears super well on Chili. It was made for him kind of thing. You see so many different versions of more common Grateful Dead. That's one I've never really seen another version of, or another t-shirt that anybody else has. I'm sure they're out there, but you don't see that often, so that's why that one places high over other Grateful Deads that we saw in the collection. So moving down to number 6 is the Yellow Escher. This one was in Brian Sullivan's episode.
Had no copyright, nothing to tell you what they are. And it just looks like a random, if you didn't know, it looks like a random print.
This is one that I don't really have a lot to say, except for it's just like it speaks for itself. So you see a lot of Eschers on black tees, white tees, and those are from the 90s on the Andasia tags. We talk a bit about it in the episode, but to see a 70s yellow Escher, I mean, again, another artist that I really have appreciation for all of his mathematical imagery and perspective imagery. It's super cool to see that, and from the 70s, which is around the era where he became popular. For decades before, he wasn't very popular in the art community, and now it's something that you recognize. I mean, if anyone's seen Spider-Man, you see some of that imagery in like the end credits. It's influenced a lot of stuff, and you can definitely recognize that kind of style when you see it. So that's why that one places at number 6. And then moving into the top 5, number 5 is another Keith Haring, actually. I know I said we didn't see many, and that's why they rank in the top 10, is because you don't see them that often. And this is the Keith Haring, that birthday tee that we saw in Connor's episode.
Just Wham Bam Birthday Jam. I was told it was kind of like a promo tee that they used for an event.
And again, this is one that it has a weird backstory. He did a lot of researching, trying to find another, and there's just not a lot of info about it. And I think the reason is because it was just an event that happened to have a Keith Haring t-shirt. And that's just, it's Keith Haring, crazy enough. And then for it to be some weird, looked like a radio station kind of event that had a T printed for it, it makes it that much more crazy. So again, it's one of those things that because of exclusivity, I've never seen another one. You can't find information about it. That's why it ranks and starts in at the top 5 of the top 10 there. So moving on to number 4, this is the Sugar Shack tee. That's what Bailey referred to it as, and Brian also referred to it in his episode. This is a cool one because we saw it in 2 episodes, and it wasn't like the same t-shirt print. It was the exact same physical t-shirt.
Now I got it back. I haven't seen another one since I sold the last one, and I don't think I'd ever sell it again.
You've seen this in videos before, but the Sugar Shack tee, or what's perceived to be the Sugar Shack tee, the man who gave it to me, sold it to me, knows who he is.
Which just shows how connected, our community is. Bailey bought it from someone within our community. I think it made a couple moves around, and then it ends up in Brian's collection for his episode, the exact same physical t-shirt, and I just think that's crazy. And that's just getting into the background of it, but the actual t-shirt itself, an all over print, it's similar imagery of Sugar Shack, Marvin Gaye's album. It's not the exact same, but it has the same, it evokes the same emotions, and it has the same premise. So I think that one's really cool, and that's why that ranks at number 4. But moving into the last 3 tees, Tony Hawk, the 1984, the first sponsorship that he ever had. This one was seen in Carson Deersing's episode.
This stuff is so rare because when Tony, I don't know if most people know this, but when he was 14 and he was a pro then, nobody liked Tony Hawk. They thought his style was whack. He wore a helmet, knee pads. He just was not cool, but he's really good.
I had never seen one before. I've seen a couple online now, just doing some research. But that one's crazy. And I think the story behind it's also really interesting because to that point, Tony Hawk wasn't Tony Hawk that we know him as. And, at that point, it was really cool to see him get a sponsorship. And it's really early on in his career. And I think just the imagery itself, if it was something that wasn't as, vintage, it would be cool in itself. But the imagery on it is insane. It's got this, it's got a hawk skull on it, and the color's great, and it's in great condition. And it really speaks to who Carson is. He's a skater guy at heart, and I think that one really just shows off to like the best of its ability, what Carson's whole collection's about. So that one was definitely really cool to see. And then moving into the last two, but before I actually get to the last two, I have 3 honorable mentions. So on Carson's episode, we saw a Pink Floyd all over print bootleg, and it's one that I've seen in other collections, and I've seen online a bunch, but to see it in person, and again, like, it is the only bootleg I think in this entire top 10. It's crazy what the bootleggers used to do when they weren't necessarily confined by like licensing. They would just throw like Division Bell and the Wall imagery on one t-shirt, and it's wrapped around, and the coloring's great on it. It's great. I think that one deserves an honorable mention. And then another one from Aaron's episode is the Indianapolis Black Expo with Carl Kanai and the Cross Colors t-shirt. The story behind this one is insane. So he said that one time he was selling a Carl Kanai t-shirt, and Carl Kanai calls who he thinks is Carl Kanai, I'm pretty sure it is. Someone calls in and is saying like, hey, I need help buying this Carl Kanai t-shirt online. And originally Aaron's like a little frustrated. He's like, it's teaching an old person how to use a phone kind of situation. And they finally, purchase it. And then the name on the order comes up as Carl Kanai. And it's just awesome to hear that story. And then I just think to see 3, brands, IBE, Carl Kanai, and Cross Colors on one t-shirt, it's insane. And again, to have Indy on a t-shirt and then Cross Colors and Carl Kanai for Aaron speaks to like who he is in his collection. So I thought that was really cool. And then the last honorable mention, I didn't put this one in, so we didn't have 3 Grateful Deads, but this one is really cool because the Grateful Dead Lithuania we saw in Connor's episode. We also saw a different one, but the same print in Tommy's episode. But the one from Connor's collection came from Aaron. We just didn't see it in his episode. I think the story behind it, that tee is great. Everybody knows the Lithuania story, so I won't get into that. But I think that one's worth mentioning because I think it's cool when you see t-shirts pop up in different people's collections, because it just shows, how iconic or important that t-shirt is to vintage as a whole. So that's the last honorable mention. But moving to the last 2, this one was a toss-up, but the 70s Levi's welterweight t-shirt that we saw in Bailey's collection.
Is that back Levi's tab?
I haven't seen that on
Yeah.
there. That's really cool. No, I haven't seen that there.
But most of the times, a lot of times you'll find them ripped off.
So it's a 70s Levi's t-shirt. It's got the Levi's white tab on the side. It's got a Levi's hit on the back, and it's got a rooster boxing on the front. And it's got like the ringer tee style to it, and the color is like a weird beige, like kind of papery color. And it's one of those that if you know, it's just insane. I felt really special to like finally get to see it. I'd seen it when he first opened up a store. I think he had it pretty early on, and I remember seeing it on the walls, and it was one of those things that it was like a display thing. And I think that is, it could go number 1 in this list, but it ended up just ranking at number 2 because number 1 is again from Tommy's collection.
Freaknik rap tee from '97. We got Tupac and Biggie on it, and this is probably the craziest part.
Yeah, this is insane. Have you ever seen another one like it?
I've never seen this one. Never.
This is the Freaknik Biggie and Pac t-shirt. So it's a Freaknik t-shirt, but it has Biggie and Pac on it. I believe he was the one that found it, and so he got it for a good price. It's a Freaknik t-shirt. It's got Biggie, it's got Pac, and it's got like this paint splattering all over it. So in my head, someone that went to Freaknik, got the t-shirt, went home to wherever, wore it throughout because it's, it's got good wear on it, but it's got paint on it, and so someone probably painted in it or just did like everyday activities in it since the 90s, and it ends up in Tommy's hands. And I've never seen another one of the Freaknik Biggie Tupac tees, and then with all of those elements in play, it was unbeatable in my opinion for this season. So again, this is in no particular like meaning of, you could find 10 others that mean more to you in the collections. And I think that's what's really cool about this, is all of these t-shirts, all of these, you know, records, all of this can mean different things to other people. So that is just my ranking of the top 10 pieces of the hundreds that we saw in collections. Again, I want to thank everyone that was a part of the crew that helped out and has made collections what it is over these first 2 seasons, and everybody that participated in an interviewee role. Everyone, I'll go down the list. We had Aaron, we had Carson, we had Bailey, we had Chili, we had Tommy, Harrison, Connor Ice, and Brian Sullivan. Thank you guys so much for being a part of collections. We have really cool ideas moving into the next season and other seasons down the line. It's been really special to be able to cover the vintage community in this way and take a look at people's collections and what they, you know, are passionate about. So thank you guys for tuning in. You know, stay tuned. There's a lot of stuff to come, and we'll see you next season.